The Department of Justice was built to defend the Constitution, but what if the very institution sworn to protect the law had quietly become the one breaking it? What if the agency meant to keep Americans safe was instead dismantling the very safeguards that hold democracy together? That's not a conspiracy theory. It's what one senator just accused the DOJ of doing, live in front of the entire nation. And if you think this is just another political clash, wait until you hear what he uncovered. From the opening moment, the tone in that hearing room was different. Senator Chris Van Hollen didn't come to debate, he came to expose.
And at the moment, I recognize Senator Van Hollen for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Attorney General Bondi. The Department of Justice is supposed to play a vital role in defending our Constitution, upholding the rule of law, and keeping the American people safe. Unfortunately, it's currently failing on all these fronts. And this budget request will make a bad situation even worse. We are witnessing a level of lawlessness from this administration that is unprecedented in scale and scope. Indeed, when asked, President Trump said he didn't know whether he was required to comply with the Constitution of the United States. Instead of defending the rule of law, DOJ attorneys are being deployed to aid and abet in lawbreaking. Like just yesterday, Madam Attorney General, when the administration took, I believe, the unprecedented step of suing all the Maryland Federal District Court judges because of actions they took to protect habeas corpus and the constitutional right of due process. To date, the administration has faced nearly 300 legal challenges in federal courts. There are currently in place a huge number of preliminary injunctions and temporary restraining orders issued by judges appointed by presidents of both parties, including appointed by President Trump. At the same time, patriotic career civil servants have been fired for upholding their constitutional oaths. In January, the then acting Attorney General fired more than a dozen prosecutors simply because they had been assigned to work with Special Counsel Jack Smith. And dozens of others have also been wrongfully terminated. And you picked up where the acting Attorney General left off when you fired the pardon attorney after she declined to restore the gun rights to a close friend of President Trump with a domestic violence conviction. Perhaps most troubling, Madam Attorney General, is you have fired attorneys like the acting Deputy Director of the Office of Immigration Litigation simply for telling the truth in court. As he said yesterday, the whistleblower, in a complaint filed, quote, "I didn't sign up to lie." That sends a terrible message to every DOJ attorney who wants to both do their job and uphold their professional ethics and integrity. While spending taxpayer resources to defend this lawbreaking, the administration has proposed a budget that is a gift to our foreign adversaries, to the drug cartels, and to illegal firearms traffickers. Why do I say that? Let's look at each of those categories. On your first day, you disbanded the FBI Foreign Influence Task Force Office, which was established to combat secret malign influence campaigns by China, Russia, and other adversaries. On that day, you also restricted the scope of criminal charges under the Foreign Agents Registration Act. Your budget cuts the Drug Enforcement Administration and eliminates funding for the organized crime drug enforcement task forces, which coordinate interagency efforts to combat the worst drug trafficking cartels. And you're effectively dismantling efforts to go after illegal gun traffickers by attempting to dissolve the ATF. At the same time, this budget undermines local law enforcement by stripping away funding that's critical to protecting our local schools and reducing violent crime in rural communities. And many organizations that help the victims of crimes are running out of their fiscal year 25 funds because, for example, the Office of Justice Programs has only posted one grant solicitation for 2025. Meanwhile, under the guise of efficiency, your budget proposes to combine and significantly cut the 3 distinct DOJ grant-making agencies, including the Office on Violence Against Women, which you propose to slash by 30%. There is nothing efficient about reducing services to victims of crime. Your budget also indicates that transparency and integrity are not priorities of the Justice Department. Over the last 5 months, you've decimated the public integrity section. Public reports indicate that this office went from 30 attorneys to as few as 5. Your budget would also slash the department's oversight watchdog, the Office of Inspector General, by $42 million. Inspector General Horowitz told me that these cuts would result in the elimination of 140 positions, which would bring investigations to a halt and interfere with the IG's ability to conduct oversight of the department. I would note that it was an OIG investigation that helped uncover the FBI's serious mishandling of allegations of sexual abuse against former USA gymnastics physician Larry Nassar. Why target these key areas of public integrity, oversight, and accountability? So, Attorney General Bondi, I hope you'll answer our questions today. I say that because your department has failed to respond to any of the 9 inquiries I have made and have responded to only 2 of 38 letters sent by my colleagues, the ranking members of the Senate and House Judiciary Committees, Senator Durbin and Congressman Raskin. So, Madam Attorney General, we have much to discuss this morning. I look forward to your testimony.
His words landed like charges in a courtroom, calm, factual, devastating. He began with a simple but dangerous question: is the Department of Justice still defending the rule of law, or has it started protecting power instead? Because what he described sounded less like law enforcement and more like law-breaking. He pointed to a move that stunned even veteran legal analysts, the DOJ suing every single federal judge in Maryland. Why? Because those judges had the audacity to defend due process and habeas corpus, core constitutional principles that protect citizens from government abuse. The senator's tone didn't rise, but the implication was thunderous. This wasn't a disagreement between branches. It was a declaration of war against judicial independence, and as the room fell silent, Van Hollen made it clear this wasn't an isolated case. It was the beginning of a pattern. That pattern, he said, was purges, quiet ones, ruthless ones. Career prosecutors and DOJ attorneys fired, sidelined, or forced out for one reason: they followed the law when power wanted loyalty. Over a dozen prosecutors were terminated after working with the special counsel's office. Others were removed for telling the truth in court. One attorney's words echoed through the hearing: "I didn't sign up to lie." That line summed up everything. These were not partisan operatives, they were lifelong civil servants, and now they were out. Fired not for misconduct but for integrity. The message, Van Hollen warned, was unmistakable. Honesty had become a liability, but if that sounded bad, what came next was even darker. Because it wasn't just individuals being removed. It was the watchdogs themselves. The Public Integrity Section, the unit responsible for investigating corruption inside the government, had reportedly been gutted, from 30 attorneys down to just 5. Then came the cuts to the Inspector General's office, the DOJ's internal oversight mechanism. $42 million slashed from its budget. 140 investigators eliminated. The very office that exposed the FBI's mishandling of the Larry Nassar case, crippled. Oversight, transparency, accountability gone, piece by piece. And Van Hollen didn't need to spell it out. Without oversight, there's no one left to stop corruption when it starts at the top. As the senator walked through the numbers, the story stopped being about budget lines. It became about intent. Because while watchdog offices were being defunded, something else was happening. America's defenses were being dismantled. On day one, the DOJ had quietly disbanded the FBI's Foreign Influence Task Force. That was the unit built to counter operations by countries like China and Russia, the very ones targeting America's elections and infrastructure. At the same time, new limits were placed on prosecutions under the Foreign Agents Registration Act, weakening the country's ability to confront foreign lobbying and espionage. These weren't random bureaucratic moves. Together they painted a picture, one where America's enemies got stronger while its defenses got weaker. And that weakness wasn't limited to foreign threats. Van Hollen revealed that the administration's new DOJ budget would cut the Drug Enforcement Administration's funding, dismantle organized crime task forces, and slash the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, the agency charged with stopping illegal gun trafficking. Even the Office on Violence Against Women, a critical service for survivors, faced a 30% cut. Local police and victim assistance programs were running out of money. The Office of Justice Programs had posted just one grant solicitation for the entire year. In the senator's words, this wasn't efficiency, it was abandonment. The DOJ was stripping away the resources that protect communities while spending taxpayer money defending its own lawbreaking. And in that moment something clicked. This wasn't incompetence, it was design. Because every system of accountability, from prosecutors and whistleblowers to inspectors general and federal judges, was being weakened simultaneously. Every firewall between power and abuse was being taken down. Van Hollen described it as a blueprint for authoritarianism, built one policy at a time. A purge here, a budget cut there, a lawsuit against judges, each move small enough to pass unnoticed but together forming something deliberate. A quiet restructuring of justice itself. Then came the question that revealed just how deep the silence ran. The senator noted that his office had sent 9 official inquiries to the DOJ, not one received a response. In total, 38 letters had been sent by congressional leaders, including members of both chambers, and only 2 had been answered. Transparency wasn't being neglected, it was being erased. The DOJ wasn't just avoiding oversight, it was ignoring the people's representatives entirely. This is not just mismanagement, Van Hollen warned, it's a calculated refusal to be held accountable. By now, even the usually calm atmosphere of the hearing had shifted. Reporters stopped typing and started listening. The air was heavy, not with politics but with something more serious. The recognition that the Justice Department, the cornerstone of American democracy, might be shifting its loyalty away from law and toward unchecked power. And when the senator asked why the department was targeting its own oversight divisions while defunding public safety, the Attorney General offered no direct answers, only deflection. No defense, no justification, just bureaucratic fog. The senator pressed again, pointing to the contradiction. How could a Department of Justice claim to defend the rule of law while firing attorneys for telling the truth? How could it call itself tough on crime while eliminating the very task forces built to fight it? Each question hung unanswered, and the silence spoke louder than any statement could. What Van Hollen described wasn't just mismanagement, it was institutional drift, the slow corrosion of accountability from the inside out, the kind that doesn't announce itself with a coup or a scandal but creeps quietly until it's too late. The longer he spoke, the clearer the pattern became. The DOJ wasn't merely understaffed, it was being reshaped, turned from a check on power into an instrument of it. When you silence whistleblowers, you remove truth. When you cut oversight, you remove transparency. When you target judges, you remove independence. Piece by piece, democracy loses its balance, and as Van Hollen laid out the facts, it was impossible to miss the bigger warning. This wasn't about one budget, one attorney general, or one hearing. It was about a system reaching its breaking point. The most chilling part wasn't the firings or the budget cuts. It was what they symbolized, a shift from justice based on law to justice based on loyalty. A department that no longer measures right and wrong by the Constitution but by convenience. That's how democracies erode, not with a single act but with 1,000 small decisions that make it easier to obey power and harder to question it. And if the DOJ can punish truth-tellers and ignore Congress with no consequence, what stops that power from spreading further? The senator's closing words felt less like politics and more like a warning to history. This budget isn't just a plan, he said, it's a statement of values, and if these are the values guiding the Department of Justice, then the rule of law itself is in danger. In that final moment, the hearing room wasn't divided by party, it was divided by something deeper, between those who saw the warning and those who refused to. Because when a nation's justice system starts protecting power instead of people, the fall doesn't happen overnight, it happens quietly, one policy at a time. He ended with a reminder that every democracy in history that fell didn't do so because people stopped caring, it fell because they stopped noticing, because hearings like this one became background noise instead of alarm bells, because people assumed someone else was paying attention. But the truth is, democracy doesn't defend itself. It depends on those who refuse to look away when power goes unchecked. So, if you believe that truth still matters, if you believe that no one, no matter how powerful, should be above the law, then stay alert, pay attention, because the most dangerous threat to democracy isn't corruption itself, it's the comfort of ignoring it. Subscribe, share, and help make sure these hearings don't fade into silence, because the fight for justice isn't happening somewhere far away, it's happening right now in plain sight.